Welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight we will embark on a much deeper, quieter, and slower journey into the very heart of the often misunderstood Viking world. Let's allow our minds to drift beyond the myths of fierce battles, the cries of warriors, and the glitter of treasure. Tonight we will not seek excitement. Instead, we will find tranquility in the details of daily life, in the sound of the wind sweeping over the northern seas, in the quiet whisper of a fire that never goes out within a longhouse. Find your most comfortable position. Allow your body to fully relax. Take a slow, deep breath, and exhale with equal slowness. Let every bit of tension leave your body. In this long and peaceful journey, we will go further than before, exploring every quiet corner and crack of their silent and difficult lives. Imagine yourself standing in a coastal village in Scandinavia, 1,100 years ago. The air is sharp, a coldness that seeps into your bones. It carries the strong scent of the sea, mixed with the smell of smoke from the longhouses that billow in the distance. This is a place where life is not measured by wealth or power, but by resilience. It is a world built upon simplicity, where every moment is spent on survival, and every sound carries a meaning. Let's begin this journey slowly, allowing every detail to sink into our consciousness and lead us into a deep tranquility. Imagine yourself stepping into a Viking longhouse. The low, heavy door creaks as you push it open, and you are immediately greeted by a darkness and warmth that stands in stark contrast to the cold air outside. The walls are made of thick timber and covered with layers of earth and grass, which serve as insulation against the harsh weather. From a single opening in the roof, a faint shaft of light filters down, mixing with the thick clumps of smoke rising from the central hearth. The aroma inside this room is a unique blend of burning wood smoke, the smell of damp earth, and the scent of the animals who share a section of the house. The air is never completely clean. Tiny particles of soot float in the still air, shimmering as they catch the light. Your eyes may sting at first, but after a moment, you will grow accustomed to this smoky environment. The hearth in the center of the room is the very heart of the entire house. It doesn't just provide the vital warmth for survival during the long winters, but also serves as the cooking place, a gathering spot, and the main source of light. The fire in this hearth is never allowed to go out. It is the symbol of life itself. Along the walls, there is a row of long wooden benches. These benches are everything to you. A place to sit during the day, a place to socialize, and your bed at night. Sleeping here is a very different experience from what we know now. There is no privacy. You sleep side by side with your entire family, your parents, your siblings, your children, and perhaps even distant relatives. Your mattress is a simple pile of straw, perhaps covered by an animal hide. Feel the cold of the earth seeping up through the straw, reminding you of the reality that comfort is a true luxury. The sounds of quiet breathing, soft snores, and the small movements of other family members are all part of your nightly melody. The morning in the longhouse begins at the first hint of dawn. There are no ticking clocks. Their clock is the sun, which moves very slowly across the pale northern sky. The first sound you might hear is the low groan of the cow or the sheep stretching in their pens at the end of the house. Then comes the creaking of the wood as someone rises from their sleep. The daily chores are a never-ending cycle. For the men, the days are spent hunting, fishing in the cold sea, or tending to the livestock. They would take their axes and go to the forest to chop firewood, or repair their weathered boats. Every action is a physical struggle, a battle against nature that never relents. The women are the heart of the home. Their work never ends. They are the keepers of the fire, the cooks, the weavers, and the caregivers. These tasks are never truly finished. They would spend hours beside the hearth, grinding grains into a coarse flour, or cooking a thick porridge from barley. The sound you hear most often from the women is the rhythmic clicking of the loom, which slowly transforms wool yarn into the thick clothing so vital for survival. Food is a matter of pragmatism. Their main diet is hard, dried fish, preserved with salt, or meat dried in the open air. Imagine the taste: chewy, salty, and not particularly pleasant, but it provides the much-needed calories. Their bread is a kind of dense porridge baked on a hot stone, which is bland and dry but can be stored for a long time. Their drink is water from a nearby stream or fermented barley beer. There are no sweet drinks. The greatest luxury is when a hunted animal is successfully brought down, which would then be roasted over the hearth. The aroma of the seared, savory meat would fill the entire room, and it is a rare moment of happiness. Their pleasures are simple, in stark contrast to the harshness of their lives. In the evening, after a simple dinner, they would gather around the hearth. There is no entertainment but storytelling. A storyteller would begin to tell tales of their ancestors, of their gods, of epic battles from the past, or of humorous stories from a neighboring village. Their low and slow voices, aided by the dancing firelight, are the only form of amusement. Listen to that sound. Allow it to enter your mind. This is how they connected, how they learned, and how they passed the long winter nights. Life is a constant struggle against famine and disease. The winters can be brutal, and food supplies can run out before the snow melts. Hunger is not an unfamiliar feeling to them. A minor illness that would be harmless to us, like an infected cut, could be fatal. They had no antibiotics or modern medical knowledge. The death of a child was common and accepted as a part of life. There was deep sadness, of course, but also a quiet acceptance. This is a world where life is very precious, but also very fragile. All of this life, every breath, every heartbeat, is a part of a slow dance in harmony with nature. There are no big surprises, no overwhelming joys, but there is a certain peace in the unchanging rhythm. Life inside a Viking longhouse is a reminder that true resilience is not about strength in battle, but about the ability to endure in silence, in boredom, and in the struggle that never ends. Let all these details soak into your mind. Listen to the crackle of the fire, smell the thick smoke, and imagine yourself lying on the straw. This is their life. This is their boring history. From the quiet, earthbound rhythm of the longhouse, our story now drifts out to the wide open sea, where ambition and a desire for discovery set the hearts of the Norse people on a new course. Our focus shifts to a single figure, a man whose name is often spoken in the same breath as Christopher Columbus, yet whose story is a quieter, more understated one of endurance and exploration. We'll follow him on a journey that was defined not by glory, but by the slow, continuous struggle against the elements. This is the tale of Leif Erikson, the son of Erik the Red, a man who had already carved a new life for his people in the frozen land of Greenland. Leif's journey was one of pure exploration, an act of intellectual curiosity as much as a search for new resources. His vessel was a longboat, a ship with a single mast and a low-curved hull designed to handle the punishing grey waves of the North Atlantic. It was a craft of simple, yet perfect, engineering, made for the immense and often terrifying solitude of the open ocean. Imagine yourself on that ship. The journey across the open sea is not a thrill ride. It is a slow, cold, and relentlessly wet existence. The sound of the ship is a constant presence. The rhythmic creak of the timber, the flap of the single sail, and the endless hiss and splash of the waves against the hull. There are no grand cabins, no comforts. The entire crew lives exposed to the elements. You would spend your days huddled in a small, cramped space, constantly wet from the sea spray that washes over the deck with every swell. The wind howls a low, mournful song in the rigging, a constant reminder of the immense power of the nature around you. Days bleed into weeks, and weeks into months. They are marked only by the shifting shades of grey in the sky and the relentless, rhythmic heave of the ship. The diet is meager, salted meat and dried fish. Every bite is an effort, every meal a necessity, not a pleasure. The water is often stale or sour, rationed to make it last. The only warmth you feel is the shared body heat of your fellow sailors huddled together at night, and the occasional fleeting moment of sunshine on a clear day. There is a deep, profound sense of isolation. For weeks on end, there is nothing but the vast, empty expanse of the sea and the sky. This is not a glorious adventure. It is a test of sheer physical and mental endurance, a quiet, repetitive act of will. The discovery of the new land, the first glimpse of a distant coastline, was a moment of immense, quiet relief, a profound sense of arrival after a long period of nothingness. They first reached a cold, desolate place of flat stones and glaciers, which they named Helgeland, the land of flat stones. They moved on, sailing southward, until they found a forested land filled with lush trees, which they called Martland, the forest land. But it was Vinland, a place they found to be rich with wild grapes and thick, sturdy timber that held the most promise. Leif and his crew built a small settlement there, a cluster of simple longhouses on a gentle shore. For a time, it was a quiet, hopeful place, a new beginning. They fished in the clear waters, hunted in the dense forests, and gathered the wild grapes and berries. They enjoyed a brief period of peace and plenty, a respite from the constant struggle that had defined their lives so far. The sounds of their axes ringing in the forest and the quiet murmur of their conversations were the only human sounds in this vast, new world. This was a moment of pure possibility, a fragile dream of a new life. But the story of Vinland is not one of a new world conquered. It is a story of a beginning that never truly took hold. The long, lonely distance from Greenland was a formidable barrier. The small size of the settlement meant they were incredibly vulnerable. And then, there was the inevitable contact with the native peoples, whom they called the Slinger. The encounters were not always grand battles, but brutal, desperate skirmishes that slowly wore them down. There was a fundamental misunderstanding, an inability to coexist peacefully, a quiet tension that permeated their every interaction. The violence was not a glorious affair. It was the brutal reality of survival in a new and unforgiving land. The short, sharp conflicts, the constant sense of unease, and the realization that they were a tiny, isolated group in a vast unknown world eventually made the prospect of a permanent colony untenable. The dream was slowly eroded by reality. In the end, it was not a glorious defeat, but a quiet, pragmatic retreat. The hope of Vinland faded, and the settlers sailed back to the familiar, cold shores of Greenland. Leif Erikson's legacy is not a tale of triumph, but of a noble, quiet attempt. His journey shows the understated courage of a people willing to face the unknown, to endure unimaginable hardship for the promise of a new horizon. The settlement was abandoned, and the knowledge of Vinland remained only in the whispered sagas. A beautiful, tragic footnote in the history of exploration. It is a story of ambition tempered by the harsh, unforgiving realities of the natural world. A gentle reminder that not all great journeys end in grand success. The rhythm of their life was a constant struggle, and even the greatest explorers were subject to its unyielding rules. The long, slow return journey was a time for quiet reflection. The wind in the sails now carried a different tune, a song of things that might have been. The sea remained the same, vast and indifferent, a silent witness to their journey. As we conclude this segment, let's leave Leif and his crew sailing back towards the land they knew, leaving behind a dream that was too fragile to last, a quiet story that would lie dormant for centuries. From the wide open expanse of the sea and the faded memory of Vinland, our story now returns to the solid ground, to a quiet, serene place where the secrets of the past lay buried for centuries. The history of the Viking Age is not just told in the sagas of warriors and kings, but also in the silent, preserved artifacts of their final resting places. And no discovery is more profoundly revealing than that of a burial ship. It is an act of archaeology that feels less like a treasure hunt and more like a quiet, reverent unveiling of a lost world. Imagine a soft rolling hillside in a place like Oseberg, Norway. For over 1,000 years, a massive mound of earth and stone rested here, undisturbed and seemingly unremarkable. A casual passerby would see nothing but a gentle rise in the land, a slight hill amongst many. But beneath this unassuming mound, the earth held a spectacular secret. In 1904, the careful, patient work of archaeologists began, not with a dramatic reveal, but with a slow, methodical peeling back of layers. It was a painstaking process of removing earth, inch by careful inch, day after day, in a quiet, unhurried rhythm that was a stark contrast to the swift, decisive raids that made the Vikings famous. The sounds were those of shovels scraping against soil, the low murmur of conversation, and the soft whisper of the wind over the ancient land. What they slowly uncovered was a thing of remarkable beauty, an entire ship, a graceful vessel that had been painstakingly pulled ashore and used as a tomb for 2 women of high status. The vessel itself, a longship, was a masterpiece of shipbuilding. Its elegant curves and intricate carvings, preserved by the heavy, waterlogged clay, spoke of a people who were not just raiders, but skilled artisans and master craftsmen. The sheer size of the ship, which measured over 70 feet long, conveyed a sense of the immense wealth and power of the individuals for whom it was built. As the archaeologists worked, they would pause, simply to admire the artistry of the wood, the flowing lines of the hull, and the finely detailed serpent head that once adorned the prow. The discovery was not an empty vessel. It was a time capsule, filled with a wealth of objects that spoke volumes about a life beyond battle. The air was filled with a sense of quiet anticipation with every new find. They found finely carved sledges, with ornate details that suggested they were used for more than just transport. They found a magnificent wooden cart, so richly decorated that it could have been used in a ceremonial procession. There were looms and spinning wheels, telling a story of the importance of weaving and cloth production in the household. Buckets, chests, and wooden beds were all found, each item a small, silent glimpse into the daily domestic life of the elite. These weren't the relics of a glorious battle, they were the artifacts of a rich, complex, and domestic existence. They spoke of people who lived, ate, worked, and slept, just like any other. The true mystery, however, lies in the human remains found within the ship's burial chamber. 2 women were laid to rest here. The older woman, believed to be around 80 years old, was found to have suffered from various ailments, including a form of cancer, a quiet testament to a life lived to its full, but also to the constant physical hardships of the time. The younger woman, in her 50s, was found with a broken clavicle, a sign of a life that may have been cut short by an accident or a more violent end. The identities of these two women remain a source of quiet debate among historians. Were they a queen and a priestess, a powerful chieftain and her confidant? Their anonymity in death only deepens the mystery, allowing our minds to wander and create our own stories of who they might have been. The silence they have maintained for 1,000 years is the most intriguing part of their story. The burial itself was an act of profound spiritual significance. The ship was not just a container for their bodies, but a majestic vessel for their final journey into the afterlife. The grave goods were not just possessions, but tools and comforts for the next world. Carefully selected to ensure their journey was well provisioned, the entire burial mound was a kind of sanctuary, a quiet place of rest and transition. This practice reveals a deeply spiritual society, one that saw life not as a linear path, but as a journey, and death as simply another stage of that journey. It shows a powerful belief in the continuous cycle of life and death, and a profound respect for the final passage. This discovery at Oseberg is a perfect example of how history can be revealed not through the grand, loud sagas of war and conquest, but through the patient, methodical work of uncovering a silent past. It shows a side of Viking life that is far from the common image, a world of artistry, complex social structures, and a deep reverence for death and the journey beyond. It is a quiet story of two women whose identities we may never know, but whose lives are beautifully and hauntingly preserved in the stillness of the earth. As we leave this sacred place, let us carry with us the lesson that the most profound truths are often found in the quietest corners of history. Having explored the quiet life of the common villager and the silent mysteries of their dead, we now turn our gaze to the highest echelons of Viking society. Beyond the daily struggle for survival lay the world of the Jarl or Earl, a powerful chieftain who was at once a warrior, a politician, and a living symbol of wealth and authority. Their life was a stark and fascinating contrast to that of the average longhouse resident, filled not with the monotonous rhythm of farm labor, but with the complex flow of power and the deep comfort of luxury. Imagine yourself in a Jarl's great hall. It is a structure of immense scale, far larger and more finely crafted than the common longhouse. The air inside is warm and thick with the rich scent of roasting meat and honey mead. Torches flicker along the high timber walls, casting long shadows that dance and shift as the fire in the main hearth crackles. The benches along the walls are not for sleeping, but for feasting, and they are piled high with thick furs and soft textiles. At the center of it all is the Jarl's high seat, a carved throne from which he presides over his people. This is a place not just for eating, but for political maneuvering, for settling disputes, and for the retelling of epic sagas by the light of the fire. A Jarl's wealth was not measured in gold alone, but in the number of his loyal followers and the richness of the land he controlled. His power was a delicate balance of respect, fear, and generosity. To his followers he was a provider. He hosted grand feasts that could last for days, where food was plentiful and mead flowed freely. These gatherings were not simply for pleasure. They were a critical part of maintaining loyalty and showcasing his prosperity. The food was a world away from the peasants' simple diet. It included roasted wild boar, cured hams, and an abundance of fine ale and mead, all served on elegant, if simple, wooden platters. The sounds of conversation and laughter mingled with the strumming of a lyre, and the Jarl would often rise to give a toast, his voice a powerful presence in the great hall. The Jarl's appearance also spoke of his high status. While a common farmer wore rough homespun wool, the Jarl and his family were adorned in finely woven linen and colored tunics, perhaps even imported silks from distant lands. Their wealth was also displayed in the intricate jewelry they wore. Heavy silver arm rings, ornate brooches to fasten cloaks, and delicate pendants of amber or gold. These items were not just for adornment. The arm rings were often a form of currency and a sign of the Jarl's generosity, as they would be given as gifts to loyal warriors who had served him well. Each piece of jewelry told a story of a raid, a political alliance, or a show of power. The life of a Jarl, however, was far from a peaceful one. His power rested on his ability to lead men in battle and to command respect. He was constantly navigating a world of political intrigue and potential betrayal. Alliances were forged and broken with a toast, and a misplaced word could lead to a blood feud that could end in a brutal confrontation. The runes carved into a stone or a piece of wood could carry a message of warning or a curse. This constant undercurrent of tension, even in times of peace, was a part of their daily life. The Jarl's mind was never truly at rest, always strategizing, always watching for a potential threat to his power or his clan. This contrasting view of Viking society reminds us that it was not a single, monolithic culture. It was a world of deep social divisions, where the rhythms of life were vastly different depending on one's station. For the Jarl, life was a performance of power and a delicate dance of diplomacy, all set against the backdrop of the same cold, unforgiving world the common farmer faced. The quiet hum of the longhouse was replaced by the boisterous sounds of the feast, and the simple struggle for survival was superseded by the complex struggle for dominance. As we end our journey, let these final images fade gently. The great hall grows quiet as the fires dim, the Jarl and his family retreat to their beds, and the silence of the night settles over the village. We have seen the Vikings not as one-dimensional figures of legend, but as people of immense complexity, living lives defined by both quiet endurance and great ambition. Our journey through the Viking world now comes to a quiet, gentle close. We have sailed from the simple, repetitive struggles of a longhouse farmer to the ambitious, unfulfilled voyages of an explorer. We have witnessed the silent, final rest of two powerful women and the complex political life of a Jarl through it all. We have come to see a society that was far more intricate, and in its own way, far more beautiful than the myths would have us believe. The Viking Age was a time of immense hardship and quiet endurance, but also of great artistry and deep spiritual belief. As you settle in for the night, you can find comfort in the quiet knowledge of this past. The longhouse fires have long since gone out, the sea voyages have ended, and the secrets of the burial mounds have been shared. Let the stories of this distant, cold world drift away, and allow the peaceful silence of the present to carry you to rest. Good night.